What's up, everybody? I'm Richard.
And I'm Shawn.
And we are speaking the language of bromance. And Shawn, I feel like I haven't talked to you for a minute, even though I feel like we have been talking nonstop for the last, I don't know how many days. It feels like forever, but it hasn't been a moment at all. You're so close, yet so far away.
Yep.
You're so, I don't know. That's the best I could come up with. I had that, and now it's done.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I mean, in our release schedule, we never miss a week, but in terms of just our time, things come up, we get busy with stuff. So we've taken a little time from not talking with each other, but we are here once again, Richard.
Well, we've taken time not talking to each other in person. That's what I was saying. Is like this is. I feel like this has been a minute since we've talked to each other, L face to L face. But
true. We've done a lot of texting.
Yeah. I feel like that's how I spend my work morning talking to you, texting you. But that's Richard, not true, because I am a very diligent worker.
That's right. Boss who is maybe listening to this. No, Richard, what I want to do today is something we don't do a lot.
Okay.
And I was a little nervous when I asked if you wanted to do this because you like to make fun of the fact that I read books.
No. I make fun of one book series you read, and that's it. I am not a that fucking reading shit.
Look at this nerd learning his words.
Poindexter over here with his goddamn wordy words on the paper.
Why don't you go to the library, nerd? No, but a while back, there was and usually how I kind of discover books, is there's a movie that's going to come out or a movie that's out, and I'm like, well, it's based on a book. So I'm like, well, I want to give the book a shot because I will always like to read a book and then watch the movie.
I just had this weird random thought that I don't realize. I actually am surprised I haven't had before. You should do. You should start Bro Book Club.
I was thinking about that. I was going to call this episode like Bro Book Club. Because I know our good
book
friend
club bros.
Our good friend Dave the Nerd
fist pound each other and you'd be like, Bro Book Club.
BBC. Wait, what? Don't Google that, kids.
I'm hanging out with
Richard, BBC.
Tiffany, I'm hanging out with BBC tonight.
I went on
BBC are gonna stay up all night.
Richard, I went on the internet. I said, "Hey, who wants to join me?" And it's a BBC tonight. I've got so many friends coming over.
Yeah, I put this thing out on Craigslist to be like, "Hey, who's lonely?"
I'm looking for some more BBC all night long. Bromance Club. It'd be so I'd get there. It's like, but our friend David,
I made a mistake.
No, Shawn, Bro Book Club.
I think I'm divorced.
But no, Richard. So like I was saying, so whenever a movie comes out that sounds interesting, and I know it's about a book, I like to read the book first. Not in really a snobby way, but I always feel like I get most out of both things if I read the book first. So it's one of those things. If I see the movie, then read the book, I kind of let the movie influence what I'm reading, and I kind of miss a lot. Whereas if I read the book, it's its own thing. Then I can see the movie, it's its own thing, and I can enjoy them both equally.
The book doesn't ruin your experience of the movie.
No, and a good example. So we reviewed this movie when it came out because the book I absolutely loved, and it's the book by Ernest, Cline, Ready Player One.
Yeah,
that's not the book we're going to review today for Bro Book Club for BBC. We are going to review Ready Player Two. So we're going to get our BBC together and do Ready Player Two.
BBC Ready Player Two.
Ooh, it goes right on my neck. So this movie came out, Richard, and I read the book first, and this is a book I've read. I've listened to the audiobook, which the audiobook, if you get a chance, it was read by Will Wheaton.
Oh,
really
nice.
Good. Really good. And he's done the audiobook for this one too.
You know, I I feel like the audiobook is not necessarily a lost art form, but I feel like there are so many opportunities where somebody can do an audiobook really, really well and almost make it like a separate experience.
Oh, 100%.
You know, and if you can do an audiobook, if you can take a book and do an audiobook really well, I think that only just enhances the book even more. You know who has really amazing audiobooks, and you can tell that they put a lot of like forethought and care into making audiobooks is Max Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
Who did World War Z and Zombie Survival Guide. And
yeah, World War Z, it plays like an audio play.
Yeah.
It's really good. I'm only about halfway through it, though, but it's really good.
I feel like he makes the audiobook, like you can tell that he puts a lot of forethought and care into making the audiobook.
But yeah.
So Will Wheaton does this one.
Well, yeah, he did the first one, and I haven't listened to the second one yet, but he does the second one too. So, you know, the Ready Player One movie and the Ready Player One book, they had similarities, but they were definitely two different entities. I kind of, you know, I feel like they could have got a trilogy out of Ready Player One if they really, really tried to. But I think for like a self-contained one-shot movie, they did it justice. It was different, definitely different. But what I liked about Ready Player One, the movie, is when you got in there, it really set, like, if you liked the book, knew the book, it sets like, hey, we know you're a book reader, but this is what the movie is. Okay. And you kind of like, okay, throw everything else away that I know about the book. It's a different ride, you know, like next to the ride that I was recently on. So thought they did a good job with it.
Okay. That's good. So I have not read Ready Player One.
The big difference between the movie and the book, I'm not trying to remember. I should have rewatched the movie because it's on HBO Max now. The movie, like there's the Shining scene, which is not in the book at all.
Okay.
And really in the thing about the first book that I think that I wish they would have played more into the movie is, so our main protagonist, Parzival, whose real name is Wade Watts.
Yeah.
He is basically this kid who lives in the stacks, which you see in the movie.
Yeah.
It's, you know, these trailers that are stacked up on top of each other. But he comes from a very poor family, but the Oasis that he gets access to is like a free version that the Halliday and the company that owns the Oasis gives out to kids so they can do educational stuff.
Yeah.
So it's basically like you think like Chromebooks that get given out. You know, it's like very low tech, very much like here, you know, it's like, you know, $300 thing. And the only thing that they got to do in there is they only got to do like the planets, because everything's kind of based off of planets in this.
Sure.
Which is its own kind of self-contained
which
world.
They kind of allude to that in like the intro exposition to the movie. They kind of like allude to that there's, you know, all these different planets and that, you know, and they're all kind of themed, for, you know, lack of a better word. But then it doesn't deep dive into that.
No, and it gives you the feel like you can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
But, you know, in this, just like in the real, like, not really internet, but in like real gaming worlds, like if you want to fast travel someplace, you have to have your own ship, or you can get like in a teleporter, but that costs money, which you can earn by playing the game. But if you're a kid like Wade Watts, you have $0. So the only place you can get access to are these like educational planets. So essentially it's where you do high schools on this planet.
Okay.
And the thing that the movie didn't really play into is that, you know, there was 3 Easter eggs you had to get, same thing. But in the book, you had to get 3 keys that then led to the 3 Easter eggs. And the very first key was on one of the education planets that was free for everybody. So to get started on this Easter egg hunt, anybody really had an opportunity to do it. And Wade Watts, a guy who was like a level 1 character, you think of him like he has 0 weapons, 0 armor, 0 anything.
Right.
Figures out where this is at. And when he gets there, it's basically he has to beat this like character in a video game. It's a game that he's played, but if he loses, the guy's like, I'm going to kill you. And in Wade Watts' situation, if he dies, like he loses everything essentially. Because in the Oasis world, if you die, all your stuff like gets dropped where you are, and you have to go back to level 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they didn't really get to play into that kind of, anybody can achieve anything kind of thing, if you put your mind to it, which I really liked about that book. And that's what the first one gives you. You get this whole adventure. He's the guy who finds all three. There's the big bad corporation. I can't remember what they're called now, but they're like the 101s is their insignia.
Yeah. I can't. Is it IOI?
IOI, yeah. What's their name? It's like, Shawn, but you love this book. I'm like, yeah, I know. But I'm horrible with names.
That's why he named his favorite book club BBC.
Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that. But yeah, IOI is the group that basically it's like the big corporation. So the Gunters are the people that are hunting for Halliday's treasure. You find the 3 Easter eggs, you get control of the Oasis, you get control of his part of the company.
Yeah.
And IOI is like the big bad corporation that's putting a bunch of money in, and but Watts is the kind of guy. It's like he did it on his own essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that from the first book. The second book, what I love about this, so let's jump right into Ready Player 2.
Yeah, this
is going to be spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, want to read the book, I would suggest if you're like, I don't have time, get the audiobook because it's a good. The first one's a good listen. I'm pretty sure this one's going to be a good listen too, and I'm confident I will get it.
Nice.
But we open up like days after this event, right? 9 days after he wins the Oasis, the main bad guy, Nolan Sorrento, who's like the leader of the IOI group.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that they start it like that soon after. Like usually with I mean, not necessarily movies, but I mean a little with movies. I'd say more with movies than with books. I'm not sure, but like they usually, it's like a year later or 2 years later or something like that. Like this is like barely 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically Wade Watts, Parzival is his character in the game. 9 days after winning, so it's basically like you could think like if Jeff Bezos or Elon, probably more like Elon Musk, right? He's like, oh my gosh, like if you're watching this, I've died, and I am putting my wealth up. If you want to have complete ownership of Tesla, you need to find these 3 things.
You want to go to fucking Mars?
Yeah,
and some like sports car. Woo!
Some like 19-year-old kid who's just graduated high school wins it. Now you have billions of dollars in control of one of the most powerful
Ferrari
things in the world.
Space.
The comparison to this that I always liked is this is like Willy Wonka. And I kind of agree with that to an extent.
100%.
So this is 9 days after he's with the girl from her name's Artemis in the game.
Yeah.
Him and her are together. They and they have a real relationship. And what Ernest Cline, I've got one of his other books that he wrote that I haven't read yet. But he does a good job, like you said. It's like, oh my gosh, like you're starting 9 days after. It's less than 2 weeks. Like that seems kind of like, too quick. But in the first 2 chapters, he does a really good job of setting what this book's going to be about. Because to me, like the first book is very much kind of open and closed, right? Like Willy Wonka. There's no sequel to Willy Wonka.
No.
The kid wins the factory. And like, why do you want to see the kid run the factory? You're going to see him at board meetings. You're going to see him testing the supply. It's like, what's the next thing you can get out of this?
Oompa Loompa.
Yeah. I said, get those numbers. Whack, whack, whack. Oh, Charlie. It's Mr. Wonka. But that's not your last name. I got another HR case for you. So, but, as this is going on, he gets he in the book there's Anarok. I'm going to mispronounce a lot of names. It's the other bad thing when the stuff isn't in the movies as heavy. Like you pronounce it in your head and that's just what it is.
Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like you hear it one way in your head and then somebody says it and you're like, "Oh, is that how that's supposed? Is that right? Have I've been saying it wrong?"
Richard, I just googled BBC. Why didn't you tell me? But he, so the only person that has access to Holiday's castle, he's the guy who created the Oasis with Og, was the other guy who created it. He's the only one that has access to this castle of his in the Oasis. So while he's there, he gets a message and he starts basically leading down the path of finding this new technology that James Holiday had created.
Oh, okay.
And when he goes and finds it, it's called the Oasis Neural Interface, the ONI.
The ONI?
The ONI. So when he finds this, he looks at it and kind of figures out what it is. And so to set the scene, so the movie doesn't do a great job of this, I think. I think it probably gives you a little bit more of what the Oni probably does. But in the first book, when you're in the Oasis, you think of it like super VR.
Yeah.
So you put on goggles, you have gloves. Your gloves and maybe some stuff you have on, you might feel some things. And some of the more expensive rigs will do things like they'll, have essential oils or different things. Like if you're in like a place that smells like farts, they'll bust something so you can smell it, but it's all still kind of physically there, right? Like it's not like the Matrix. Like when you're in the Matrix, everything is real.
Oh, okay. So you're saying like in the book that the more higher end rigs that you use for the Oasis, it's more like that 40x, like a 40x theater.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what you look at.
Where you're like you're like in a rig and like you smell things and feel things, but it's all like external. It's all the rig putting external effects on you.
Yeah. And like if you feel like a pinprick, maybe the gloves will do something, but it's more physically happening to you. So, like if you're swimming, you won't feel wet.
Right.
Unless you have a rig that might squirt water on you, but even then that might take you out of it.
Yeah.
But in this new book, he discovers the Oasis neural interface, the ONI.
Uh-huh.
And it was one of the very last things that James Halliday was working on before he died. And it kind of explains what it is. Wade Watts, Parzival puts it on, and this is what you would think of as like super, like movie Oasis, right?
So this is like it basically like directly connects to your brain.
Yep, you hook it on, it hooks into your brain. You have a 12-hour period that you can be in it because they kind of discovered that after 12 hours you can get severe brain damage.
Fun.
And the other thing with this too is like in the other Oasis, a lot of the rigs and stuff, like you have to do the moving around. So it's kind of like you get exercise out of it.
Yeah.
But with the Oni, it's right into your brain. So you don't have any of that stuff going on. So you just kind of like, you basically like, it's like a lucid dream.
Yeah.
Except you can feel and sense everything.
Kind of like what you see in, well, like you said, like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Or like Cyberpunk. In Cyberpunk,
Yes.
they have, when they go through on the actual net, then they're usually like lean back in a chair and there's a wire that's going into their head and they're doing stuff, but they're still just like laying in a chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you're completely brain dead. Like if you have to like get out of your Oni experience, so get out of the Oasis, like if you're in like in a regular rig in the Oasis, you could hear somebody coming into your house or anything like that. But in the Sony rig, you can't because your brain is essentially in the Oasis at that point. So he discovers this, and he also learns that from this technology, people can wear this and experience things.
Okay.
And you can actually relive those experiences. So,
oh wow.
Yeah.
So okay, one thing in the movie, the super expensive thing that they wore was like that haptic feedback suit. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think
in the movie he put on that suit where he was able to like feel things.
Yeah, I mean you could think of it like that would be kind of like the old school Nintendo, like whenever you could wear like I think maybe it was for Sega, and if you got shot. Right.
I guess I'm saying like was that whole haptic feedback suit thing, was that in the first book?
Yeah, they had like super expensive rigs in the books too.
Okay.
But the cool thing with this is that so basically somebody could wear this Oni and go through some experience. You think like surfing, playing basketball, obviously since it's the internet, sex. He talks a little bit about that. And you put it on and you get to experience everything that happened. You can't control anything, but you're there in that moment when it happens. Yeah. So like, it's not like you're trying to surf. You're just experiencing the feels and the emotions and everything that happened while somebody's surfing. So that's like within the first few bits of this book, and that's where it jumps ahead like a couple years. So,
okay, so it starts like 9 days. So the very first part of the book is it's 9 days out, and Wade goes and how does he find this stuff?
That's the part where I was saying he goes to the castle that he can only have access to in the Oasis. That was Holidays, and I think he sees something in there that he didn't see before. And the other note too that you'll know that you probably should know is that in that castle there's a button that only he knows about and only Holiday knew about, and it was a big red button that if pressed would shut off, like completely shut off the Oasis.
Okay,
so it was a kill switch to the Oasis.
Okay.
So he sees something there and like ends up giving him an email and gives him like a locker number at the actual real life facility for the GSS that he worked at. And so that's where he went, found that, opened it up. And when he put it on, he relived some of the experiences that Holiday had when he first introduced it to the original owners of the GSS.
Okay. So that's the first like 2 or 3 chapters of this book.
Maybe the first chapter and a half, because basically after this,
So then from that point, now we're going to jump 2 years ahead.
Yeah, so we jump a couple years ahead. And in here, you kind of learn that. So he brings it. So in the book, there's the group, the High Five, which is in the movie too. All of them survive, but in the book, the younger, I think his name was Cheeto, maybe, yeah. He's actually killed by Sorrento in the book.
Oh.
Sorrento goes to his house in Japan and live feeds it to the other 4 because they called themselves the High Five.
Yeah.
Because they were on top 5 in the charts.
Yeah.
Or in the rankings. And Sorrento actually throws him out of his window.
Oh, shit.
On live feed so the other 4 see him. So there's only 4 people that survive through this book. It's IROC. No, is it IROC? What's her name?
No, IROC was the hired bad guy.
Yeah. So it's Parzival, Artemis, Dido, and then his friend. God, why can't I remember her name? AECH.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 that survive. And same thing in the book. When he wins, he basically says, "I'm splitting it with my friends." I think it's one of those things. I think he splits it, but I think it's more like, well, I have 51% of the company.
Yeah,
you
like,
have the 3.
I mean, like, I'm splitting it, but like, I'm still the winner. But you guys are like the best second place.
Yeah.
Of all the second place, you guys are number 1.
So when he finds this, he shows it to his friends. And they have like a big meeting, and they always vote to like figure out, okay, what do we want to do with the company? And when they look at this and they see it, his girlfriend's Artemis. She's completely against it because she's like, listen, people spend way too much time in the Oasis as is.
Yeah, they kind of address that at the end of the movie, where like they say that like
they shut it off every Thursday or something like that.
Yeah, they shut it off like 2 days a week or something like that.
Yeah, in the book they don't do that because I mean, really, like it's in this book they really hit on it. The Oasis is essentially like the central economical education, like it's the life force of the world. Like if this thing goes away, like everything would collapse.
Yeah.
Because in this world, it's very war torn. The cities are really your safest place. Like there's just like a bunch of bad people all over the country and like kind of desolated pieces of the country, other countries, there's famine, pandemics, like all kinds of bad stuff. So the Oasis is really the only safe place to go.
Yeah.
And so when they introduce this, 3 of them say, yeah, H, Dido, and Parzival all say, yeah, we think we should go to market with this. And Artemis is the one's like, no, like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, we already have problems with people being in the Oasis way too much as is. Like birth rates, like, people aren't having kids until they're like in their 30s and 40s because it's one of those things. It's like, why have kids? I'm busy with this. And her point was like, now I'm
killing noobs. Well, I ain't got time to fuck.
The whole thing with this too is like, because they talk about, you introduce this thing where now you can put on a headset and experience a sexual experience. Why would you go have the real thing? Because you risk, disease, you risk, all kinds of things, relationships, marriage. Like, why do you want that? Just put this thing on.
Feelings.
Yeah, you put this thing on, you feel the good feels, and you move on your way.
Yeah.
So they all say no, or she says no, but the rest of them say yes. So they go to market. And as you would expect, so this is kind of like, it's like quick hitting, like, oh, okay, all this stuff is happening really quick.
Okay.
They're kind of skipping ahead. And, the Oni is bigger than they could imagine, right? Because, you have to think, the Oasis, like, people are obsessed with it to begin with.
Right.
And now
well,
you're
and
saying,
also it hasn't had a technological leap for probably quite some time.
well, yeah, the only real technical leap they had would have been, I mean, it'd be expensive stuff. So it's like you can get your base, I say Chromebook, you can get your Chromebook, but you know, like somebody can spend $3 or $4 to get like a really awesome gaming laptop, right? Or gaming computer.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing with this. Like, you know, I mean, people don't have that money, but when they introduce this Oni, it's like, we can make this very affordable so everybody can have it.
Right.
So now everybody's rig is the same, and you essentially feel everything you would feel in the Oasis, like in real time.
Yeah.
It does come with some downsides though. Like I said, when you're in the Oni, when you put the Oni on and you're in the Oasis, your surroundings you have no control over. And they did start to see like people would understand that was happening and they would go and break into people's homes and steal stuff or hurt people. And so they kind of developed technology around that, like basically like these coffins that were super enforced, and they'd have cameras or they have alerts around them. So if somebody broke into your home, it would alert you and you could wake up out of it.
Yeah, it would like dump you out.
Yeah. So it kind of created like a whole other industry. And because their GSS, this company they own, is so big, they essentially own all that stuff too. So they're like the one big company. And they actually, they kind of talk about, I think.
I don't like this. I'm already not liking this. Let's put one company in charge of everything. I don't know, man. I don't care who's at the helm.
I don't remember if it's before the Oni or after the Oni, but they essentially buy IOI as well. But if you remember in the movie, people that worked for IOI were basically like servants or indentured servitude kind of thing.
Yeah, indentured servants. Like they all accrued debt and they were trying to like work it off.
Yeah, so when they buy that company, they basically clear all that debt from everybody and let them go, and they basically hire them as actual employees. So they do some good there.
Yeah.
A lot of the owners, you know, like I said, I think Artemis gives like a ton of her money away trying to help people, and all the other groups do too. So the first couple years, they do a really good job of being good with all this, and then the Oni, they take care of it and they do what they want. Wade, on the other hand, gets a little bit high on himself. And I thought that was kind of interesting because you see this kid coming from nothing, and now all of a sudden he has everything.
Yeah.
And he
didn't die a hero. He lived long enough to become the villain.
Yeah, it was very petty because, you know, he's got this cloak that he can go anywhere in the Oasis. He's the highest level character in this whole Oasis. Right. He essentially finds somebody, snap his finger, and they're dead, right? Not in real life, but in the Oasis.
Yeah.
And what he would do is he basically did like the Jay and Silent Bob type thing. If anybody talked crap, because him and Artemis have a falling out over this I thing. So they basically break up from it.
Over the Oni, you mean?
Yeah, because she kind of leaves the company. She still comes in and does like
she's like, fuck
meetings.
You guys. I mean, I'm still going to take the money. Don't get me wrong. But
she donates a lot of it. But she's like, I'm not having sex with you
no more.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, you should have wore that Oni the last time we did it, and you could relive that. Yeah, even though it only lasted a minute. Parzival, more like Parza Small, am I right? I'm going to go to the BBC now. Wait, you're in the Bro Book Club? Yeah.
Whatever. Whatever gets you through the night, am I right? Am I right or am I right?
But what he does is if anybody talks crap about him on the internet, so like basically as in like a blog or a video, he goes and because he can find anybody, goes to them like hidden and kills them.
Are you... Beelzebub 86? Yeah. Did you say Parzival is fucking clown shoes?
Yeah. Oh shit.
And dead.
And so like there was rumors going around the Oasis because a lot of people were starting to really hate on him because, you know, they're like, you know, it seems like whenever anybody talks crap against him or Artemis, they somehow end up just like dying by some invisible force.
Yeah.
And so he kind of starts to pull back and he's kind of like, this is like 2 years after all this. And it's like what he said. He's like, you know, questioning like, all right, so, you know, I've got all this stuff. I've done all these things. Now what? And when the 7,777,777 Oni, or no, I'm sorry, simultaneous users are on the Oasis and Onis, a new game starts.
Oh, shit.
So I can't remember everything on here, and the wiki doesn't go into it too much, but essentially the scoreboard clears off that had been up there for like 3 or 4 years, however long it had been. And there's a new one that is basically telling, and it's called the Shard Riddle. And it was that the heir has to find the 7 shards to reconstruct the siren's soul.
Okay.
And so like 3 or 4 years go by and nobody can find this first shard. And there is a famous kind of YouTube, I guess it'd be considered like YouTuber in this, named Lohengrin. And this is, and I'll kind of back up on this because this is kind of interesting. They don't talk about it too much, but I think this is probably a good spot to talk about because she kind of plays a part of it. But
okay,
when the Oasis was created, when this ONI was created, the Oni, there you can relive everybody's experiences, right? And it's the internet, and they don't go into like super graphic details, but they talk about, people are able to experience, straight sex, gay sex, bisexual sex,
right?
All different kinds of sexes, orgies. They can do drugs without having the addictions from it. They can experience all these different things.
Yeah.
And even with him, like he says, like I've tried a bunch of different things, and it kind of explains that like it almost makes it that people are more accepting now. But the person Lohengrin, when she shows up, he kind of like is able to look into.
I'm all for BBC now.
Yeah,
I love that Book Club.
That's a good point. Like you can experience it, but then you don't have the hangover. Like, I can't sit down.
Yeah, you don't have to sit on a donut.
But Lohengrin shows up, and it's a female character in the game, and he does some research on it, and it's very quick and throwaway. So I didn't know if it was going to be more part of the book or not. But it mentions that Lohengrin, I don't think they have their actual name on here, but Lohengrin is the character's name in the Oasis.
Okay.
And they were born male, but then transitioned to female.
Okay.
If I understand. One of the ways. But in the game, it was female, and she kind of switches what her character's,
the character's gender fluid.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, I thought there'd be more that they'd kind of push, or he'd kind of talk about and kind of like making that like gender fluidity, but that's really the only part he talks about it. And the reason I bring that up too is because in the first book, when he meets Artemis, again, it's just like when you meet somebody on the internet, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm a 32-year-old single female. Right. You're like, oh, are you? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And in the first book, like him and Artemis had this like relationship in the Oasis. And I actually almost thought that like when they met in real life, that she was actually going to be a guy kind of thing. So it was going to become like
because it puts like that. Then it's like a whole different dynamic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
that'd be interesting.
It almost reminds me of like, the Black Mirror episode where the two dudes go in the video game and bang each other.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, in the real world, they wouldn't bang each other. So, it's like if you meet them and it's like, oh, it's actually a dude, but I had these feelings for you. And like, would you question yourself? And so I thought they might kind of play with sexuality a little bit, but it was really just kind of like a quick mention and then kind of moved on.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess I don't know if that's because it's one of the, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things. Like if you go into it too much, then you run the risk of almost like kind of pandering to it. Yeah. But if you just, if you mention it and say like, this happens and, and that's it, then it doesn't, I guess by diminishing the significance, then it's just, like, oh, okay. And then we all just move on.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it plays out. So it makes sense how, whenever you read stuff like that, I mean, at least in this day and age, I'm always like, okay, is that going to play a big part of it? And will it feel like pandering? Like, at the end, it's like, oh, only somebody who's gender fluid can actually do the last thing. And you're like, oh, okay. Okay. But again, it was just kind of like, here's the situation. Was a guy, transitioned to a woman, plays the character as female, on our way. And Parsifal's the same way. He's like, right. I might have had some feelings before the Oni, but now I'm just kind of like, I've had all these experiences in the Oni. It's like, it's whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's no mention of it
you know what?
after that either.
Like I guess when you consider that, like for the sake of the story, you don't call it, you don't play that up because it's not important. It's not important in the story because it's not really important to any of the characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like if you Facebook okay, say this is today's age, and you meet somebody named Lohengrin, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna take a look, and you start going back, like, wait a minute, is that her brother? Oh no, okay,
yeah. It's like I said, like it's not important in the story because nobody cares.
Yeah, and it's just a fact that he kind of found.
Exactly, and it's not that nobody cares.
No,
it's nobody cares.
Yeah,
like, it's fine.
Just what it is.
Cool.
And so I kind of wondered too a little bit with that, like if this thing existed, would there be a little? Because I know there's guys that I hang out with that whenever they play video games, they play as female. So would that kind of tweak that any or make it more? It's not, I wouldn't say the norm, but if it'd be more accepting. That's kind of the feel I got from the book, that he made like this Oni and all this Oasis and everything with it kind of made people more
I could see
accepting of it.
I could see that. Especially like as time went on.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, people would be curious. It's like, well, here's this, because basically it's just like a Apple playlist, like a Spotify playlist. You can go through and find all these different things. Yeah. The top ones are up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought I'd mention it because it's a little bit in the book. I thought was kind of interesting, but
that's cool.
Lohengrin finds the first shard.
Oh shit!
And she takes Parzival to the place, and she says, "Listen, I tried to get this thing. I got all the way through this event, and when I went to grab it, I couldn't pick it up." So we learned that the only person that can grab the shard is an heir to Halliday's treasure. Which there's only two people in the Oasis that have inherited something specifically from Halliday. Uh-huh. That's Parzival, and that's his former partner, Og. Og was given all of his video game cabinets, so all his old arcades.
Okay. Well, okay, so wait, to translate to the movie, was Og the guy that was played by Simon Pegg?
Yes, yeah, that was Og.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just...
So he goes to the event, and I'm trying to remember all the specific, because there's 7 places that he has to go. The first one was like, so I'm sorry, let me back up. So Kira was in the movie too. That was Og's wife, who Halliday was in love with as well.
Right. That I remember.
And so basically what happens is he goes to like 1980 something, their town, so where Og and her lived, and he's going through a room, has to like fast forward somehow. So there's like some, you think like puzzles in video games where you have to do this, do that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this 1984 world is fast forward to 87.
Okay.
And that's where he's able to get to the shard. He gets to pick it up. And when he grabs the shard, it takes him to a very specific memory from Kira. And each time he gets one of these shards, it shows him a different experience. I mean, they matter to the story, but in time wise,
so the Oni directly, I guess not that is the Oni, like you need the Oni in order to experience these shards.
No, well, you would need the Oni to, I would assume, to experience what she went through,
right?
But the only person that can grab the shard
is Parzival and Og.
Yeah,
right. Okay,
and so he grabs a shard, sees her experience, which he makes a small note. That's why I think Ernest Cline, like, he's like an Easter egg, just like great at putting Easter eggs in these books.
Right.
Like, I think the first one, he said that there's still tons and tons of Easter eggs that nobody's found yet. And so he makes a little note that Parzival kind of thinks like, well, it's kind of weird that I would experience this very real memory like I would in the Oni. I can't remember what they call they have it up here. They have a specific name for the experiences. So basically, like, real life experience, RLP. It's not that, but we'll say that's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's an RLP file. And then when you experience that, like, you have to have an Oni on to build that RLP file.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he finds it kind of weird that Kira would have this very real memory that he experienced of hers. When she wouldn't have been around when this was created.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of had that thought too.
And so he starts questioning. He's like, well, did Holiday program this? And it's like, I don't know how he could do that. So he travels through that one, and then that leads him on to the next place where he has to go.
What is in the memory?
So this one, it was her, I think, being kind of lonely in this town because she was the one that created. So let me back up because it's not really in the movie, but in the book, she's the GM, the DM for their gaming group.
Yeah.
And she creates this whole world. So it's kind of her experiencing that, creating this new world and experiencing that like game day type experience with Og and James Holiday.
Okay.
So that's the first one. Trying to think of all of them. There's one where she is going back home, I think, and she's really sad about that.
So are there clues in the memory that lead to the next one, or is it they go through the memory and then they get a clue that leads them?
So he goes through the memory. The memory doesn't really have any clue of like what the next thing would be. But on the shard, it will have a like message of what's the next thing. So it's very like Easter egg, like, you know, there's this thing that does this thing, and he's like, oh, well, that would be this.
Yeah.
So I know like it's the first time that James Holiday saw her and Og. They're at like a party, so that experience is up there. There's an experience where Og goes to her house in London, I think, and saves her from her abusive dad or stepdad.
Okay.
There was an experience where I think she was programming some stuff. There was an experience where Prince sang to her at her birthday party.
Oh my God, that sounds fucking amazing.
You just wait until I tell you about something about Prince. You're going to like this. I can't remember the other two. There's two other ones as well. I think one of them might have been them creating this like educational world. Because that was the other thing that they love to do is they created this like very educational thing.
Yeah.
So the places that they basically, so now those are the memories that each time he got a shard, he experienced.
Yeah.
But then but first he had to find all the shards.
Yeah.
So the places he had to go to find these shards. Oh, sorry. Let me back up.
Oh,
this is a very key point. So after he finds the first shard, he is back at GSS and he's explaining to all the other owners, H.
Yeah.
Dido,
the other, well, now 3.
Yeah. All like what this is, and like this new game. He's really excited about it. Their butler guy, one of the guys that works there, comes in. Guy who's been in this book the whole time, like nothing crazy, comes in.
In the book, wasn't the or in the movie, wasn't the butler Og?
Yeah, it's not like that kind of butler. I would say it was more like basically think like a secretary almost.
Okay,
like he's kind of just like helping the guys out.
Gotcha.
But I'm trying to remember now. I think he touches Parzival. So now they're in the Oasis world.
Yeah.
Because that's where they have their meetings. And he touches Parzival. And when he does that, he turns into James Holiday. And Holiday starts explaining this whole game. And it's kind of weird. He's like, what's going on? And then he turns into Anorak, like the character that Holiday played inside of the Oasis.
Okay.
And this is where it gets sinister because Anorak, when he touched Parzival, stole the cloak of Anorak, which basically makes him invisible, it's like the most powerful item that he can have.
Yeah.
And in doing that, Anorak basically says, hey, I'm the AI that was created. James Holiday thought like after the game I would go away, but I didn't. I am here. And if you notice, since you logged back in, you can't log out of your Oni. And every single person right now in the Oasis on their Oni cannot log out.
Oh.
Until you find the 7 shards and give them to me. And it's alluded to that the reason he's doing that is because, well, you don't really know why until he starts going through and seeing like these memories of Kira. And he starts putting it together that it's like, wait a minute. Are these 7 shards going to bring back like a AI version of Kira? And the James Holiday character, the James Holiday AI.
Oh, I see.
Wants to have like basically have the love of his life.
Yeah.
In AI. So that's basically, hey, I've got 12 hours. I got to find these 7 shards. If not, I'm dead. My friends are dead. Everybody in the Oasis is dead. We're going to get sued. Although they have like a bunch of stuff that's like, well, legally we won't get sued because we tell people, hey, like you're kind of doing this at your own risk.
I mean, like it's a little bit of a plot hole, but it's like, all right, starting right now, nobody can leave. Well, what about the person that's been logged in for 11 hours and 59 minutes that was like, all right, time to wait a minute.
Well, I think it's set up too that like the 12 hours, like some people can go a little bit longer, some can't. And you start to basically have like shock syndrome.
Okay.
So you'll kind of like go unconscious and some people come out of it. Most people don't.
Yeah.
But they have like a lot of stuff built on the Oni so that like you can't go past that point. Like it'll automatically log you out.
Okay.
But with a new patch, the AI character essentially cut all that out.
Okay.
So that's the MacGuffin, right? That's why he needs to find these 7 shards.
All right.
So the places he goes to her house. He goes to a John Hughes world.
Ooh.
Where he has to essentially fix the Pretty in Pink situation.
Nice.
It's essentially kind of written like you have to fulfill like the duck that was promised kind of thing.
Oh.
And apparently Robert Downey Jr. was supposed to play Ducky originally.
I did know that. I don't know why I knew that, but I actually did know that.
Yeah, and he goes through this whole thing about why that's the case. And so what they had to do is they had to kill the original Ducky and do a couple other missions to get it so that Robert Downey Jr. would play Ducky.
Okay.
And that's how they got one of the shards. They went to an educational world. One of the last ones is they had to go to like Middle Earth, like pre Lord of the Rings.
Oh, all right.
What was the other ones? I should have wrote these down though. I can't remember all of them. Let me see if I can find.
I'm liking this. What do they do? What do they do in Lord of the Rings world? So this is like Second Age, like.
So they have
Sauron's
to go
walking around and Isildur's walking around, and
they have to go and find like some dude that's got like it's like the most powerful person in Lord of the Rings lore.
Oh shit. Fuck. God damn it. I can't remember his name. It's Sauron's master. I think it's Morgoth. No, Melkor.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got like this crown that's got like multiple gems in it.
Yes.
And at this point, he's down to needing 2. And so he's like, oh, I'll go here and I'll pluck 2. But apparently there's a story in the Lord of the Rings myth that a guy that did this mission did that, and that's what ended up causing his demise. So he just needed to get 1. And that's what he does. He goes in, he plucks 1, and they get out.
Yeah.
But that was kind of, so this is a little bit jumping around, but when he does that mission, and what's cool about Oasis to me is like all these worlds exist, and each one basically has like their own missions, like the John Hughes world.
Yeah.
There's multiple missions you get to do in this.
Yeah.
And this one's kind of the same thing. You can get like gear, all kinds of cool stuff. But yeah, on that, they pop that one off and they have to get away. And the sweet thing about this is that this is where she comes back to save Parzival, because Artemis was his girlfriend in the beginning, but they broke up because of the Oni. And when all this is going down, she's like a Lord of the Rings like guru.
Uh-huh.
And the book that the stuff is taking place in this specific mission, Parzival was too nervous, or not too nervous. It reminded him too much of her to read it. And so he never did. So he didn't really know what to do until she showed up and helped him solve what he needed to solve.
Kind of wrapped up now. So Melkor is basically like a fallen god. And Melkor becomes the god, becomes Morgoth. So like when you watch Lord of the Rings and they talk about the Balrog of Morgoth.
Yeah.
Morgoth is like, so like if Sauron is Lieutenant Evil, no, that's not a good comparison. Sauron is like second in command to Morgoth, who was formerly Melkor, who was a god. Well, one of the gods.
I should have done a better job at this book job, or
Well, I mean, you're trying to explain a book to me that has like literally hundreds of pop culture references.
That's true. I should have wrote down all.
So I do understand, like, it's hard to try and sum this up. So does he get these shards? He gets all these shards?
Yeah, he gets all of them. Like I said, I mentioned that one. So the one that I wanted to tell you, so he goes to like this educational world where he gets it pretty quick. So this is where like I'm in like the last like third of this book, and he's got like 3 or 4 shards left that he has to get.
Okay.
And I'm like, how the fuck are they going to wrap all this up?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, and
I was a little nervous because one of them is located on this education planet that him and his mom used to go to all the time.
Okay.
And so he had already like basically done all the quests. And so he gets to kind of like walk right through and get that shard. And I was a little nervous that this was going to be like a situation where it's like, oh, and then the next ones are like that as well. Uh-huh. But he does a good job kind of mixing stuff in there. The 5th shard that they get, this is the one that I thought you would like. They go to a planet called the Afterworld, Richard.
Okay.
And this is a planet totally devoted to Prince.
Oh, world of never-ending darkness. You can always see the sun day or night.
Yes, and that's what you get to do in this planet.
Do you call up that shrink in Beverly Hills, the one, Doctor Everything Will Be All Right?
I'm sure you could have. I don't think he mentions it in the book. But so H is like a huge Prince fan. And so that's Wade's like best friend.
Yeah.
And so she gets everything together, and they have to do a battle that nobody's ever won. And essentially they have to go to this like main battle place and fight like 4 incantations of Prince through the years.
Oh shit.
And Richard, do you know who they get the tag team with them to take on Prince?
Who the
Morris Day and the fucking time. Yeah. You get this is the only in the first book you get a Kevin Smith reference. And in this book, you get a reference to Jason Mewes playing Jay, introducing Morris Day in the Time. And you learn, Richard, that there is a View Askew planet.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed, though, because it wasn't located in like the 37th parallel or whatever they call their districts. But like that got me excited. It's like, you were telling me that I can go to a planet that is all View Askew. I can get poked in a very uncomfortable place.
Like the back of a Volkswagen?
Like the back of a Volkswagen. Let's see. So
bravo. So I'm guessing you have Purple Rain Prince, you have the artist formerly known as Prince, you have you have Prince, you have the artist, then you have Prince again, and then what would the 4th one be?
I'll have to look back through and give you those. I think you'd be interested in seeing those.
How do you fight Prince? I don't even know.
It's like it's basically reminded me almost like the Michael Jackson where he turns into that big ass robot kind of thing. Like it seems like it would be like the most glorious battle ever because it's like like you're playing guitar and you're shooting them with lasers. Morris Day and the Time is like battling with drums and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
The other cool thing about this planet, if you made any bad reference about Prince, you would get struck by lightning.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that should be a rule in life.
So that was a planet I thought was kind of cool when they did that. And like I said, towards the end, it's the not Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings planet.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the last one for the death of me now. But kind of wrapping everything up that's going on here. So he gets back and he experiences all these things that Kira went through, but now he's got a plan. And so the other kind of side story to this is that Og was kidnapped by Sorrento.
Oh, no.
So we find out that Sorrento got out and Anarok helped Sorrento get away. Because the other thing they introduced into this, which is kind of weird, but I guess kind of works, is that you can control like robots from the Oasis in the real world.
Oh, shit.
So it's almost like you're inceptioning it.
Yeah.
And so Anarok was able to control like a robot in the outside world, help Sorrento get out of jail, and they kidnapped Og because, like I said, only 2 people in the entire world can get these shards.
Oh, okay.
Og and Parzival. So Og got like the first 3, but then like he stopped all of a sudden. So since they had they really cared for Og, they were trying to figure out how to get him back. And this is kind of where it like speeds up like it feels a little Stephen Kingy where you get kind of the end and stuff starts kind of really barreling forward. But they try to save Og, and they learn that they need to find the only weapon that can kill Anarok in the Oasis, which is a weapon that Og created called the Dork Slayer. So
I love it.
Yeah. So with some trickery of hands, Parzival gets back his robe, so he's got that back on. Because how he does is he basically makes identical shards, and when he gives those to Anarok, he touches him, which then gives him back the cloak. So he gets back into the castle, and we see this epic battle of Og versus Halliday.
Oh shit!
So there's a big battle in the sky, whack, whack, whack. Stuff happens, people die. And Anarok, I believe, wins. No, Og, I think, wins like last moment, like his last breath, and then he dies. Okay. And kind of like tying up Anarok, you kind of learn that, he wanted this to happen, I guess. I'm trying to remember. It's a little fuzzy because really at the end, they determine it's like, okay, well, he really wasn't going to kill anybody. Anarok wasn't. Like, he had everybody kind of in like a safe stasis, and he just wanted to get her back, Kira, to give her the option of existing or not existing. Because what you learn, Richard, is that James Halliday in real life, and that's the last memory you see, is he gives Kira this Oni device. And whenever you put this Oni device on, it records, basically it takes like a full copy of your memory of yourself and stores it. Oh. And we learned that these are like digital copies of yourself. They're quick saves, if you will. Oh. And those things can be pulled up and exist in the Oasis. And so as she does this, as Parzival puts these together, brings back Kira in her Oasis character, she kind of explains that, Anarok had her in her own Oasis for a while. And basically Anarok realizes this is kind of icky. Like I thought. Yeah. And again, this is kind of like a Black Mirror episode of like the spaceship one. It's like,
it's like you're copying people and you basically have a copy. It's like it's this weird kind of slavery thing.
Yeah. And like Anarok's like, well, I mean, I have forever, right? Like I can make you fall in love with me. And slowly he remembers it's like, wait, like you love Og, Kira. Like Og is your love of your life. Nothing will make it so that you and I will be together ever. And so this whole thing was kind of to get her back, because she's kind of in a stasis mode, to get her back to be able to say, like, do you want to exist anymore, or do you want to like basically delete yourself? And she comes back, and we find out that this is where they kind of tell you, like, anybody from the past can come back. Yeah. Because Artemis brings back her grandma, who used an Oni machine because she had cancer real bad. So it was a way for her to kind of get past the pain. Okay. So she's getting to like basically see her grandma and hang out with her. Yeah. And, when Kira's back, they're like, sorry, Og was kind of the same way. He never wanted to use an Oni. But Richard, when he was battling Anarok one time, he put on an Oni. Oh. So that he's able to come back and him and Kira get to be together.
Oh, that's nice. That's sweet.
Yep. And so we learned kind of the ending to this whole thing. So everybody's kind of like happy, and like now they're kind of like, okay, we have all these files of anybody that's ever used an Oni, and essentially life will live forever. And I didn't mention this too much, but they kind of talk a little bit about it in the beginning of the book. All the group from GSS, the three ones who like the Oni, basically were concerned that the world was going to implode at some point. Like it was just not going to be habitable. So they created this spaceship that had Oasis technology in it. They had the best Oni, like enough power that they could get on this spaceship and leave Earth, and they had their own like Oasis system. Okay. And so as I'm reading this, like to me, I'm thinking like, okay, well, you're kind of talking a little bit like Afterlife, right? And you've got this completely separate Oasis world that's disconnected from your existing Oasis. Yeah. And I kind of thought that Ernest Cline was going to play a little bit with like heaven kind of thing. Like we're going to take all these people who pass away when you pass away, we're going to put them on this other ship in this other oasis. They don't really do that though. Kind of how it ends is that, Parzival creates like his own copy of himself.
Yeah.
They make some other copies of other people and they put them on this ship and then they send them essentially looking for other life.
Like send them out into like for real space?
Yeah. So like Parzival 2.0 or Parzival 1.0, AI Parzival, if you will.
Yeah.
Is on this spaceship with like, they've got like eggs and stuff in there so that like they could start technology and they can control robots outside. So it's almost like a raised by wolves type of scenario.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're still in communication with their real life people. So, we learned that Wade and Artemis, they have a kid in real life.
Oh, nice.
And so it kind of ends on a good note, but that ending part, I felt kind of cheated a little bit with the ending.
Did it try to set up for another book? I guess I should have asked, like, did Ready Player One try and set up for another book?
No, I mean, Ready Player One, it's its own thing.
Yeah.
This one I feel kind of the same way because I think the only place you could go with Ready Player 3 would be if like the ship lands on a different planet and then it's not really Ready Player like at all. It's more of a colonization of a new planet type thing.
I guess I guess the thing that I like when you say Ready Player 2, I guess it kind of leads you to believe that like this is this like I guess like I would have been more. It makes more sense if you're going to call it Ready Player 2 than it should be a story about somebody else completely.
Yeah, I almost assume that would be so. Really, kind of how Ready Player 2, that phrase works into this world is when you log into the Oasis and the original rigs, it always said right before you start Ready Player 1. With these Onis, like when Wade put it on for the first time, it shows like a warning message and then it says Ready Player 2. So it's essentially like this is your Oasis machine 2. Like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's kind of how the Ready Player
so
part
it's more. It
plays
should
into
be more like Ready 2.0.
Yeah. Like Ready Player Console 2.0 kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I did enjoy the book. I kind of like the thing that I really was thinking about when I read this is like the first book, like I said, is very much kind of like youthful, take the world by its horns. You can accomplish anything. And this one was a really bit more of a, you're 20 years into your career, you're kind of like, what am I doing with my life almost? And then this whole like midlife crisis event happens.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, I get to go on a quest again. Yay.
Because he does discuss like death, how that plays into it, and this whole thing is like you could bring somebody back. He doesn't really dive into like like if like something happens to me and this existed, right, Richard? Like I want to bring Shawn back, and you bring me back, and it's like, well, is that really Shawn or is it just?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're gonna raise those kind of questions like about physicality and like what makes a soul, and like if you're gonna raise those kind of questions, then you should touch on them a little bit.
Yeah, I felt kind of like because I thought it'd be kind of interesting if you said like with the Oasis company, what we did is when somebody passes on, if they choose to, we will take their last save and upload it to this spaceship that is running on solar power, and that's where they can live forever. And so they're not in the Oasis, but it's kind of like a heaven. But I think way too much into this stuff. It's like, well, would that be me? Like if I die right now, would I experience that? Or am I experiencing that right now? Am I dead right now?
Am I in the spaceship?
Yeah, exactly. Am I going to a planet? Is there a sun
there?
Oh God, power down, batteries low. I'm going to miss the next BCC.
Does that kick me out of the spaceship?
I'm going to miss the next BBC meetup. But I'm probably definitely going to listen to the audiobook because I think you get a lot more out of that too, just kind of a second run through. And it's, I enjoy audio dramas anyway, so it really kind of helps scratch that itch.
Yeah.
But all in all, like Ernest Cline, I think like some of my favorite artists, writers, Richard Matheson's way up there, and Ernest Cline's definitely kind of getting up there pretty quick too. The other thing that this got me sparked, I talked to you a little bit about this before. When I was younger, I used to read these Tom Clancy books. He didn't write them, but he was like had his name on it, and they were called Net Force.
Mm-hmm.
Net Force. And it's kind of like I told you, it's kind of like romance novels, but for dudes.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not anything like intellectual. It's not super deep. It's it's watching like an action movie kind of thing. And they just rebooted it too. And,
nice.
And the original books, at least the way they were set up, is that this was like the government agency in the VR Oasis-esque world.
Who's better due for a BBC than Tom Clancy?
Mm-hmm. So, all right, our next BBC meetup, we're going to talk about Tom Clancy's Net Force.
Yeah.
And I'm all about the Force.
Net Force. Next BBC.
But, Richard, I hope you enjoyed me rambling about this.
I did. Actually, okay, so... I obviously did not read the book. You were explaining it to me, but like you telling me about it, I will say did not ruin my, like, I'm not going to be like, well, I heard you talk about it, so now like I'm good. Like I don't feel that way. Like I will probably go and eventually pick up at least the audiobook, at the very least the audiobook for this.
I think giving both those a listen would be good, but yeah, as we're tidying up this episode, I guess, do you have any questions or like anything?
No, you pretty much, you answered my questions as we went. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Richard, what does BBC stand for?
We'll talk about that. That's for our post show notes.
All right. Well, what are some Richard's closing thoughts as we finish up this first ever Bro Book Club?
You're the one that read the book. I mean, I think that, I guess for me to wrap this up, I would say that like I said, even though I heard you explain the book to me, it sounds like it didn't really sully my eventual experience with the book. Like I'll probably still at the very least get the audiobook, listen to it and enjoy it, even though I kind of know where it's going to twist and turn.
Yeah, I think even if you just read the Prince part or listen to the Prince part, you'd be pretty happy about that.
Well, and I think that it obviously lends itself to like, hey, it's a book about like a bunch of pop culture and bullshit you really like. So like, you want to, read this book and fucking learn about all the cool shit that's in it? Yeah, I do.
Well, let me do a little bit of housekeeping as we tidy up. Visit our website, we're languageofbros.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at languageofbro. Email us at bros@languageofbros.com. And we always like to thank our patrons, Wendy and Aaron.
You're our player twos, and we're always down to have BBC with you guys.
If they ever create a bromance planet in the Oasis, they have free membership. They get the first access they get first access to the BBC.
Yep.
Bro Book Club.
First dibs on BBC.
All right. Well, Richard, is there anything else before I close her out?
I'll explain to you what this means in a bit.
All right. Well, that's all the bromance we have for this show. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Richard.
And remember, don't be a why.
Be a why not.
Hashtag BBC.
So, Shawn, what it means is...
Whoa.
You're welcome.